And we're back.
Welcome once again to Tales from the Page at PaizoCon Online 2021, where members of the No Direction Network get to talk to Paizo staff about the cool things that are coming out for the Pathfinder role-playing game for Starfinder, Pathfinder in this case. I am from No Direction. I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Perram.
And we are joined by Pathfinder developer Patrick Renie to talk about Fists of the Ruby Phoenix, the adventure path that's out completely in a couple of weeks. And possibly, we were told by Eric Mona we should also be grilling you about Quest for the Frozen Flame adventure path.
All right, yeah, bring it on. Thanks for having me.
All right, so if you are watching us live, feel free to ask any questions about the Fists of the Ruby Phoenix tournament or Quest of the Frozen Flame adventure path. But first, Fists of the Ruby Phoenix, I'm just excited. It's not a question. It's just an exclamation point.
Yeah. It was a blast to work on. It's such a cool thing to like play in it feels like a hallowed space. You know, this whole Haojin storyline. Like there was a whole PFS arc about her and the Haojin tapestry. You know, she's got this big entry in Lost Omens Legends. It's really cool to play with such a prominent character in the Pathfinder canon.
And now, I liked the Ruby Phoenix. As we saw it last time, but it really seemed like it got most of its grandeur because it tied into the PFS season, and that helped build up the grandeur so that when the module hit, it ended with more weight than its page count was able to deliver. It's interesting that it's being delivered now as a full AP, full being 3-part, and I know it stand on its own right. Do you think that this is making a better Ruby Phoenix than we've Ruby Phoenixed before?
You know, as far as Ruby Phoenixing of the past and Ruby Phoenixing of today, I would say it's definitely a more full, it's definitely like a richer, more expansive experience, because the original Ruby Phoenix module, when it all started, that was 32 pages. Now, with the Fist of the Ruby Phoenix AP, it's almost 300 pages. So we're looking at 10 times the amount of Ruby Phoenixing. And I think just in terms of sheer volume, sorry, a cat just hopped on my lap. Internet cat. And now she's away. Okay. This is what people came to see. You know, as far as the amount of Ruby Phoenix, there's 10 times the bird here. So you know, you're gonna have 10 times the feast. It's gonna be 10 times the fun. I think people are gonna get a hoot out of this. There's so many fights. There's so many characters. I didn't even mention, like, in the last thing, like there's a whole bunch of sponsors that you have to impress in Goka for the tournament to get a tournament sponsor. So that's like 10 more characters. You know, it's just there's so many locations, and it's such a rich tapestry, as it were, of an AP. I think it turned out awesome, and you know, it's interesting that it's only 3 parts, because a normal AP is 6 parts, but you know, this allowed us to keep the story really tight, not have, you know, three volumes where you're like training or whatever for the tournament. You know, this way it focused on the tournament itself, and then and a little bit on either side and the world around it, and kept it tight, but also like gave us a ton of room to play with, and I think people are going to have a hoot.
We have a question from No Direction Network's own Vanessa Hoskins. She's saying, are cheesy names for special moves required or optional? And the reason I'm asking this question already from chat is because it does kind of highlight that there's definitely the chance for this to be a really wacky, silly adventure where it's all about a big fighting tournament. But is that the intent? Like, will that actually frustrate GMs and go against the main feel for what for how the adventure is written?
Well, any GM who's, you know, ran more than one game knows that frustration is the name of the game. If you go in thinking your players are going to do one thing, you're gonna be frustrated, right? So, you know, all that to say, you can never tell. My intention, you know, for this was kind of to create this playground, kind of create this choose your own tournament, because there's so many different types of you know, media inspiration to draw from. There's like gritty, you know, video gamey tournaments where it's just, you know, super, you know, I'm an ex-army officer who's avenging my ex-partner from the last tournament, blah blah blah. You can do that, sure, that's awesome. There's my personal favorite example is always Dragon Ball Z. There was a huge arc, and that was a formidable and a formative part of my childhood. And that's in the goofier realm where it's just like, okay, how could they make this tournament any cheesier? And there's all sorts of things in between. With the player's guide, it's funny. It's so funny that Vanessa asks about cheesy names for moves. The player's guide gives you a whole table, like 8 tables for how to build your fighting team. So the whole point of this, I'm a huge fan of like random table generators. So this system, as it were, allows you to flavorfully come up with your team's shtick. Or theme, so it helps you come up with like where you all came from, where you all met, what you're fighting for, who you might know, and one of those things is quirks, and it's a D20 table, and that is like, here's your team's quirks. Maybe you're all afraid of the color green, something totally weird like that, and like if you see it on the other team, then you're paralyzed with fear or whatever, and it doesn't have to have a game ramifications. It's of course for fun and help you get into the world, but one of those is you come up with increasingly ridiculous names for your moves. This is my ultimate fist buster deluxe and stuff like that. I think this AP definitely enables that kind of silliness if that's what you want to go with. I think if you want to have a more serious game, as I mentioned in the panel, there's plenty of examples of other teams that are taking this really serious. These are hardcore guys from, Viking lands who are, they're killing Linorms in their spare time. This kind of thing is serious business to them. And so you could play it that way if you want. It could really go either way, I think. Yeah.
Are those fighting the fighting team building charts? Are those for a session 0, or is that part of the first act
That's
of
like
the first
part of the session. That's session 0, yeah. So it's part of the player's guide, which helps you. It was a weird balance to strike, right? Because you can either, since the AP starts at 11th level, you can either make a new character at 11th level, and there's guidelines in the core rulebook and in the player's guide for how to do that. Or you can take a character from a previous campaign or an ongoing campaign, like Abomination Vaults, and you can continue using that character. And so the team building tables in the player's guide help you, firm that up. You can either roll randomly or choose just from the table of ideas and work with your players at the table to come up with a cool team concept. And of course, that's all optional, right? Like as anyone who's played a certain Pokemon game will know, it helps to have. You shouldn't be it might be easier if you weren't a team of all evocation wizards or all illusion wizards. I mean, evocation wizards, you'd probably be set, but if you're all diviners, it's a funny gimmick, but it might make for a tough fight. So there's something to be said for, we're the team that's varied and actually has a good strategy. Yeah, that was a weird needle to thread in that player's guide, is like, how do you write a player's guide for people who are playing at 11th level? But that it includes everything for if you're starting with new characters or if you're starting with old characters, whatever you want to do. As I said before, we really strove to make this feel like a playground in a lot of ways, this tournament.
It's funny that you went all evokers with your example, because I feel like if I were to GM this, I'd have to sit down with my group and say, you can't all be monks.
I mean, and that's definitely like one of the things about all these fighting teams that you face off against, right? That this huge cast of characters, and there's all these different teams that reoccur through every volume because it's a tournament. So if you beat them in the first fight, they might go to the losers bracket and come back, and you might fight them later. It's a small town, as it were, even though it's a huge town. But you meet all these characters and you meet them again, and I think that's one of the coolest things, is you're kind of traveling around, but you're rooted in these characters and their stories, and those teams are like one of them. I think one of them is a team of monks, and like they all like specialize in a different stance or something like that, right? And they all wear a different color, so that's kind of cool, and it might give you inspiration. And like, how cool would that be if you're jamming a game or you're playing in a game, and it's like you say with your fellow players, you're like, oh, we should all be monks, we should all wear different colors and all do different stances, and then you meet this other team that's the exact same thing, and you're like, oh, it's on now. Like,
new plan, heavy armor, swords. You were talking about the losers bracket. How hard will it be for GMs to be running the rest of the tournament behind the scenes? And are there any players' aids or GM aids that will make that easier for them?
There's definitely aids, and that was part of like figuring out how this double elimination bracket works, because I keep saying it's a playground. We're trying to create this like open world experience, sandboxy experience where anything could happen, and no two games are alike. That said, we do need a story. It's nice to have a story. So there are some beats basically that, and it's all kind of laid out in there's a really nice graphic in the second volume that shows the tournament bracket, and it fills in the parts that are scripted, as it were. Nothing's scripted. You can change it, make it your game, but
predetermined results in a tournament.
I know, right? Yeah. So that's there if the GM wants to use it to help you not have to figure out like, oh gosh, which of these two teams that the PCs are watching is going to win. So yeah, there are definitely accessories and stuff built into the text to help you not have to think so hard about that, for instance.
Now, what sort of material is going to be provided or encouraged by the Adventure Path to statistically tie in the players together? Like, are there going to be, besides the backgrounds, are there going to be like, this looks really great if everybody has the duelist archetype, or et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, good question, Perram. There are a couple items that you get that are part of this Adventure Path. Early on, it was in the first volume. So like, there's you get this Ruby Phoenix necklace, and that helps your party. Basically, it's kind of like a do-over if you have a whoopsie and die, or something like that. In the middle of the jungle during the pre-qualifier, be a short AP. So there's this whoopsie necklace that basically resurrects you one time, and but if everyone returns with that intact or whatever, I mean, that's good, presumably, throughout the whole first volume. So it's kind of like, it behooves you to not jump off a cliff just to see how it works, because then it's done. So there, to your question though, are there items or are there archetypes or feats that help tie the players' abilities into one another? That's kind of so baked into the Pathfinder game, like finding these cool combinations and developing these strategies, that while developing this AP, I felt like it was almost like that work was already done. Like the AP is basically, it rewards players who have thought of those things, who are like, oh, if I take this feat and you take this barbarian feat, then and I'm an alchemist, then we can like totally mess things up. That's great, because there's some hard fights in here, and having good strategy will help you win those fights. So that it kind of plays into Pathfinder's already very mechanical, like swapping out the gears and swapping out all the different modular parts of the game. It really plays off of that. I feel like we didn't have to invent new things, and it was so hard to like imagine, like, okay, here's a new monk, stance or whatever. Here's a new thing that works if you have 4 monks on your team, because it's like, well, most players are probably not going to do that. I mean, maybe. So we tried to build up the options so that there were plenty of options for if you had a varied team or whatever. There's options for spellcasters, there's options for monks, there's options for fighters. So it builds up and continues the very like foundational aspect of Pathfinder, which is like find the winning combination.
TRDG11 has an interesting comment about watching the other competitors' fights. Can you scout your competition?
Yes, but you can't bet on them. That was something we built in, yeah, because in Goka, like betting is a huge part of the whole thing. But it seems like there might be foul play if uh, I said yep, and then I'm like, why did we take that out? Yeah, that was definitely something we considered anyway, and it's definitely taken care of. There's definitely like safeguards in place so that you can't like get an unfair advantage. I remember what it is now. There's exhibition fights before the tournament, and so it's like an exhibition showcase. And so basically, that's like show off your cool moves, fight this monster in front of all the judges. Like this doesn't really count toward the tournament, but it determines your seed more or less, or like it determines like your betting rank and that kind of thing. So you want it to be good, so people bet on you and maybe you get a cut of that money or something. But at that exhibition showcase, you get to see what your rival teams are capable of. So yeah, there's definitely like an opportunity to do that. It's kind of like up to the GM if they want to like show exactly how every ability works. There might be some players and team and parties that are like so into that, and they're like, yeah, I want to know exactly how many, how big is this cone that this guy can cast. And it's like, well, if you can see that, sure. You also don't have to. It's not built with that assumption in mind, but it's definitely an option.
Metagame knowledge becomes part of the plot.
I mean, yeah, it's a tournament, right?
So your traditional adventure path is usually like a series of events and encounters strung together in more or less a branching or straight line. How much is this going to be a different experience to run as a game master, or like how much is this going to be a traditional adventure versus a machine that is moving parts?
Like how much of it is a sandbox versus how much of it is like a railroad or something. That's got a bad connotation, but yeah, I think I know what you're saying. Yeah. Well, as I alluded to a little bit earlier, there is a plot, there's a story. It's kind of it's definitely related to Haojin because she's back. And guess what? When you're a super powerful sorcerer who's been traveling the cosmos for 300 years, you got some baggage. You made some enemies, and maybe they don't want the tournament to go all according to plan. Maybe they have some big reptilian friends that they want to send in, mess things up. I'm just saying these are ideas. So there is a plot, and I think it's made a little easier for the GM if you're into the plot and you want to stick to that. It's made easier in some ways because since it's a tournament and it's structured, it's like, okay, the preliminary round is 3 days, and I love talking about this because I can talk about this and not be afraid of spoilers, because in a tournament, in true tournament format, the rules before you're going to play. So these rules are all laid out at the beginning. The pre-qualifier is 3 days, and you have those 3 days to get 10 silver feathers, and if you get those feathers, you qualify for the tournament. And then the tournament itself is a week and change long or whatever. It kind of depends on how the fights work out exactly, but each day is structured so that there's a main fight and an exhibition fight, or some combination of those two. And so it really does provide a railroad or a foundational, like a line, a linear line that a GM can follow if they really want. But it's kind of like every stop on the railroad has so many like branches, and it can totally just like weave in and out. Will you get from point A to C by the end of the adventure path? Hopefully, yeah. There's probably not a good way to avoid that, other than doing the typical, party thing and hanging out at the bar the whole time or whatever, making friends with the bartender who the GM has to design on the spot. That'll always happen. But if you follow the adventure path, yeah, you'll have a story. You'll have a linear story if you want. You'll also have a ton of sandbox stuff to just to make it your own. I really do think that no two games of this AP will be exactly alike.
If there's a GM that just wants to run a tournament and doesn't want the plot, in theory, it could happen. Where Easily, is the tournament within the 3 volumes?
It's in the second volume. Yeah, Ready Fight is the tournament itself, but there are each volume is has its own little, like, it's all part of a big tournament, right? So in true, I keep leaning on Dragon Ball Z because I've only seen one show in my entire life apparently, and it was Dragon Ball Z. But in true that format, it's like, oh, you got to get to the tournament, but there's a pre-qualifier, which is also a tournament, and it's like, oh, you beat the tournament, maybe there's more tournament, or something like that. So if you really just want like one tournament, if you want like one module that it's like, this is the tournament module, then the second one is going to really scratch that itch. That said, if you get all three, then you'll have like different kinds of tournaments to play into, and it really does create this cohesive story out of a tournament, which is, it's kind of crazy. I don't know, it's kind of a weird feat to pull off, is like, let's make it a tournament, but it's also got to be a story.
Now, we lovingly poke fun that during an adventure path, your average party goes from level 1 to 20 within, a few months or a year. This is literally an adventure path where they're going to show up at 10, and a week later, they're 20. Like, are you playing to that with the tropes of the genre?
I mean, it's that's the funny thing about math in Pathfinder, I think. And that said, it's not exactly a week. So like the island stuff that happens in the first volume, the pre-qualifier, it happens a while before the second volume, because everyone's got to get from Minata, which is that's like on the other side of Tian Sha from Goka. Like they're at opposite sides of the map, and so you have some time on the boat to like level up, and you got like a month or whatever if you take a boat, or you can teleport, whatever, and hang out in Goka for a month. You have time, so I think it doesn't stretch the credulity in that way. I think you can definitely, but that said, during the tournament, you do gain a couple levels over the course of a week. you know I don't know what to say about that, other than like some you grow a lot when the stakes are high, and when fascinating things happen, right? So it does make sense in that way. That's like, oh, we've been fighting for our lives every day for the past week. Yeah, I think we learned a couple lessons along the way, and friendship was one of them.
But we're not sore or anything. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, there's there's a hot tub in the the Olympic Village kind of thing. Yeah.
I was just wondering if that maybe there was like, a skill challenge portion where everybody screams really loud till their hair changes color.
Oh yeah, I mean, I didn't directly put in Super Saiyan levels into the AP, but I'm massively regretting that now, Perram. That's a golden idea, and I think we need to make another AP pronto. That's the Super Saiyan AP.
We've danced around this. What are like the big inspiration stories, medias, and stuff? Like if it was like, watch these 5 pieces of content before playing this AP, what would they be?
I'd love to talk about that. Yeah, sure. For me, and that's kind of the best part about working on such a team like Paizo, is everyone comes from different walks of life and has different inspirations. I'll mention something to James Jacobs, who's also has developed tons of APs, and he'll be like, "Oh, you should definitely check out this movie and this movie and this one." And or I'll talk to James Case, and he's got all sorts of different touchstones to touch on. But for me personally, I think you can definitely see the inspirations. Doesn't even take a very careful reading, because the Isle of Banmu at the very beginning is very reminiscent to an island that the island in the movie Battle Royale, which was a great Japanese 1999, I think it came out. The kind of the original Hunger Games in a lot of ways, right? Where it's like all the worst kids from high school get sent to this island and they have to duke it out, and only one can win. It's a crazy story, and so that was definitely an inspiration. Definitely toned it down because that movie's a little wild. Not a family friendly movie, I would say, but it's a hoot. Dragon Ball Z, mentioned that one, classic. I mentioned that one a lot because it has such a distinctive tournament arc. Like there's a world tournament, and it's got a flat arena, and aliens come and mess it up, and it was just a really easy way to, it was like really helpful for me to be like, how do you make a story out of a tournament? Like and I keep saying that, and it seems difficult because it's like, well, a tournament in real life, like hopefully it goes according to plan. You usually want, your March Madness bracket to not end with kaiju attack at the end, because I don't think anyone put money on that. But in fiction, you have to make a story around this thing, and so other tournament based games, I think of like Street Fighter and video games like that, Mortal Kombat, obviously, but didn't, other than the tournament style bracket, there, I don't think there was a ton to draw from that. I do think like the Mortal Kombat movie, I remember as a kid, like it definitely like helped cement that every fighter has their own grudge to bear and their own reason to fight, and I really liked that angle. It's like, why are you here, for the money? No, I'm here because I'm avenging my like long lost brother or something like that. And it's like, whoa, okay, it's high stakes. So kind of wielding that story around, it was helpful to look at franchises like that. Trying to think of other inspiration. I'm sure I'll think of them as there were a bunch, but yeah, those. Oh, I know another one, and this is more embarrassing than DBZ, but a little show called Yu-Gi-Oh, which was also a formative part of my childhood a little bit. I bought a deck or two of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and it's got this great anime and manga, and like they have a couple tournaments in it, but they're card tournaments, right? And so they have all sorts of silly gimmicks in them, though, where it's just super dramatic, super over the top, and feels like super high stakes. And then you zoom out a little bit, and you're like, "We're playing a children's card game." People are getting trapped in the Shadowverse, but it's still a card game. So I kind of approached it from that angle. It's just like this is a fun tournament. It's not meant to be like life or death. Like How Jin didn't want to do a tournament where people like died all the time. Like that's not a very fun tournament. I don't know. I don't think anyone wants that as part of their legacy. It's like 500 people have died in this tournament because of How Jin. It's like kind of, I don't want to put that on my tombstone. But so it's a fun tournament, and I think that's kind of the way I'm. If I hope people enjoy it. I don't care how you play it as long as you enjoy it, right? But if I were to enjoy it, I would enjoy it as a very lighthearted, very like, not silly, but over the top. I think, like everything in Pathfinder that I do, it's over the top. If you played Agents of Edgewatch, you'll know that I'm a huge fan of like action movies and action tropes and stuff like that. And, yeah, I just think it's fun to go big, go big or go home, go big and stay home.
What's funny was watching chat with every time you would bring up a new pop culture inspiration, like people would fill the chat with references, but the people, like the specific people that were talking, shifted with each one. So it's like, this is a topic that appeals to people all because they've got this one thing that they relate to it, but it's not the same thing for everybody. You're going to end up with a group with Goku, Pikachu, Johnny Cage, and The Undertaker in it.
Perfect. Yeah. Oh, wrestling for sure. I love like those crazy wrestling like meta plots that they have. Like like The Rock. There's he got his start wrestling, and he was like the baby face, and he was always getting whooped up on until the end when he would heroically like defeat the heels. Yeah, wrestling definitely played a big part in that, in the melodrama aspect of the AP.
I mean, it goes all over the place. I mean, there's a version of this that the Mighty Ducks show up if you really want it to. I think that we live in a society where we do these tournaments as a way to express dramatic conflict because, we all don't want to go to war, and because that would be bad.
Mm-hmm. And it's yeah, absolutely. It's a way to condense the stakes of life, which I'm gonna get really deep here for 1 minute, but like you look at life as a line from birth until like the end of it, and you're like, how do I tell a story about this life that makes sense, so it's not just a series of meaningless random events? And a tournament codifies that, right? You have seeds on either side that you can be like, oh, this is like numbers, and I can look at these teams and be like, oh well, because it has this player on it, like their jump shot average is this, blah blah blah. It helps you like contextualize and think of these big stakes, like going to war or going to doing these grand adventures. It helps put it in a way that feels safer, more removed from like reality, and a bit more just lighthearted. It's why we all play games, right? Same reason we do tournaments is because we want to tell a story with winners and losers and good guys and bad guys and heroes and villains and that kind of stuff. And a tournament facilitates that in a really neat, tidy package. Day by day, it's laid out so that you can just follow the track, and you've got a great story by the end of it.
I also like how you're able to feature the other competitors and talk about like the rivals and the people that get to know, where as in most adventures, like we might see a reoccurring villain or two, but most of the time when you show up to an encounter, that's the first and last time you're going to see Kobold Henchman number 4.
Totally. And that's one of the best, like that's one of the greatest parts about like this KO format, right? It's like, yeah, you fight till everyone's knocked out, but they're still alive. Yeah, like I said, you're gonna see them in it's called Ruby Village. It's kind of like the Olympic Village, like at the Olympics there's always this like cool hotel or spa or whatever where everyone hangs out, all the athletes hang out. And it's kind of like that, there's a shopping center and stuff like that. You get your own little house and you're all right next to each other in this little neighborhood. So it's kind of like if you have a really nasty fight where you kick dirt in somebody's eyes and you're like, haha, I just blinded all of you with this, super powerful color spray spell. And yeah, I'm going to knock you off the tower and rub your faces in it. And it's like, see you at dinner. It creates like really, really cool role-playing opportunities that you don't, that I agree, you don't see in a lot of adventure paths, because so much of them are like, oh, you got to take this person out and you killed the monster. Thank goodness the monster's gone. There's fewer monsters, there's more people and more stories, which is cool.
Now, is there a good
players reacting to being told they can't just kill the one they hate?
I mean, there's nothing stopping you is the thing, and like I alluded to earlier, there might be a team or two that's kind of their MO too, and so I don't want it to sound like there are no stakes. Like there's definitely a team or two that's like, oops, my sword fell on the knocked out one, or whatever. There's definitely like teams that aren't afraid to play dirty, and I don't, if the players don't want to, if they want to play dirty too, I think they should. I think that'll be a hoot too, because guess what? You're still gonna have to see the other teams who just saw that fight. They're gonna be like, man, what did you do? You just did that to Jerry? You just cut his head off like at the end of that fight. What were you thinking? And it's like, well, yeah, that's going to create a crazy story. I don't know.
Not Jerry.
So is there going to be a good amount of content designed for that village part, the after the actual tournament battle parts, where like, are you going to explore what life is like when we're not punching each other?
It's because the whole second volume is set in Goka, which is this huge city. You could set campaign after campaign there. It's just like Absalom, in that it's massive. It's a huge city. You do have multiple opportunities, and there are events and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, baked into the adventure that take you outside of the arena, usually after hours and stuff like that. And that actually was for practical reasons, as well as it was for a lot of practical reasons too, because for pacing, for one thing, like mentioned earlier, you don't want a bunch of fights all in a row. Like that just starts to feel a little samey, little like every, you want them to have stuff in between so that they feel more special. And so we introduce events that are kind of like, oh, here's an NPC encounter where it's not a fight, it's a skill challenge, or it's like just figure out how to help them. Like I mentioned these sponsors earlier, and so they're basically kind of they're not the judges, but they're the kind of the judges. Haojin is the judge, but they're her friends, and you want to impress Haojin's friends, because it's good to be friends with the judges' friends. And so there's these two of them that had like a falling out a number of years ago, and you stumble upon them. Yvonne mentioned Shaylin's Comb, which is this beautiful like basalt column kind of place on the shores of Goka. You take your date there and have a picnic, and it's this beautiful lookout point. And you stumble over there for some reason after a fight one day, and yeah, you meet and you see two of the sponsors, and it's like, oh, you're here, didn't expect. Oh no, it's like we had that falling out years ago, and you're kind of in the middle of it, and you're like, huh, we could just not do anything, which is probably good, or we could like try and resolve this, little subplot, tie this story between these two characters, and help them, I don't know, make up basically. And it's little event. There's like a bunch of those. Like it's little events like that I think will be as memorable as the fights themselves. Because in the fight, you'll be like, it'll be really intense. Critical hit, critical miss. Always intense when you have a Pathfinder fight. But like there will also be these interactions that contextualize the fighters and the people around the tournament outside of the tournament itself. And I think that's important because it makes the fights feel more important.
I don't want to run out of time and not cover Quest for the Frozen Flame, because Lauren from the KDCon team would never forgive me. So we just have a bunch of questions from Lauren, then we'll open it up to anyone else. I'll throw them at you. First, she wants the Frozen Flame elevator pitch. She wants to know if there will be a Fus Rodah focus spell. In all caps, she wants to know if there will be long ships. And then in all caps and a lot of exclamation points, she just says, rating?
Ooh, well, I will give the elevator pitch for Quest of the Frozen Flame. I'm very excited about this. This is the next adventure path after Strength of Thousands. 99% sure. I don't have, the schedule's not in front of me, but I'm working on it right now, basically. And it's a 3-part adventure path, just like Fist of the Ruby Phoenix, just like Abomination Vaults. This one will take you from level 1 to 10, and it's set in the realm of the Mammoth Lords, which is our, that's where a lot of nomadic Kelid followings kind of live. And so these are nomadic hunter-gatherers who follow herds across the tundra with the shifting seasons. And so you are basically members of this following that's seen better days, and you fall, for better or worse, into a position of authority in that following, and you need to guide them to safety. So the basic pitch is that war is on the horizon. A rival following is beating their war drum, and they're not there to make friends. And so you've got to get away and strengthen your following. You have to recruit megafauna like saber-toothed tigers and mammoths, of course, and big bears. And it's very much like a living with the land. I keep calling it like the cave person AP. One of my favorite movies ever is Quest for Fire, so that's like the touchstone, right? It's and it's all about getting this artifact, which is called the Primordial Flame. And so you're like, what's this artifact? It's some sort of torch, and but it's really important. And you're basically like going around hunting mammoths, collecting more people for your burgeoning following, and looking for this powerful primordial artifact. And action.
All right, well, we already have a ton of questions from chat.
Polar bears and saber-tooths?
Sorry?
Oh, I was saying, so we get to ride polar bears and saber-toothed tigers and mammoths?
That's, that's not a thing.
So Tabletop Obscura specifically is asking for getting the Mammoth Rider back. Mammoth Rider was an archetype in the first edition.
Yeah, I remember that from Paths of Prestige. That was one of the first campaign setting books I developed way back in the day. It wouldn't be a very good Realm of the Mammoth Lords AP if there wasn't a Mammoth Lord archetype, right? So you can rest assured that we got you covered.
Archaic Language wants to know what levels this AP will run.
It'll run from 1st through 10th, and the reason for that is because it's supposed to feel like a very, Realm of Mammoth Lords is a low tech place, for lack of a better way of putting it. It's a place where Southern technology like clockwork and stuff it's not a thing really. It's like a lot of barren landscapes, a lot of animals, a lot of plants. And people wandering around trying to live in this really, really brutal landscape where it's like cold a lot of the year, and if you're not getting attacked by a saber-toothed tiger, then you're starving on the tundra, wandering from pond to pond. So we wanted to make it like about survival and feel like that like desperate survival, and it's just a lot easier to get that kind of tone when it's lower level AP. You don't have access to such powerful magic right off the bat, for instance. So you can't just conjure food right out of thin air, which kind of lessens the survival aspect. So yeah, 1st through 10th, short answer.
But it's
so
a
I'm getting a
part
lot
AP,
of like,
right?
It's a 3-part AP.
Oh, okay.
And
I'm getting a lot of like
Sorry, go ahead, Perram. You're
I'm
getting a lot of mythological.
Sorry, it's just the lag of the internet, how it works.
I know.
But I'm getting a lot of like mythological, like Death March, like Iliad vibes off of this thing. So how much of this is going to be like the struggle of these people? Is that the focus, really?
That's a good way of putting it. It is it's about a journey. I chose the name Quest for the Frozen Flame pretty deliberately because it's supposed to be like the quest AP. You're walking from place to place because you're part of this following. You can't just like pick up and leave. When you're part of a party, adventuring party, it's like, well, we got to stick together, but we can teleport 4 of us out of here and just go to the biggest city. And it's like you can't really do that because you got a whole family and a bunch of mammoths to take care of, and you can't just leave them in the middle of the tundra. So you're literally trekking across the wasteland, not wasteland. You're trekking across the tundra, and I wouldn't call it. It's not a wasteland. It's like a beautiful place. I don't know. I want to hang out in the realm of the mammoth. This sounds great. It reminds me a lot of like the Cascades and like hiking in Washington, which is where I'm from. So kind of took a lot of inspiration from that. It's like backpacking. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna sleep in a tent tonight and eat, a really measly meal, but I'm gonna find some awesome like acorns on the ground tomorrow and eat those tomorrow. Definitely don't do that while backpacking. I do not condone eating strange acorns that you find on the ground unless you know what you're doing. In this AP though, yeah, you'll be doing plenty of that. And it is very like hard Scrabble, like kind of the it's like getting through the seasons. Another aspect of this is like the seasonal thing. You guys brought up earlier like how funny it is that like in Ruby Phoenix you level up like 4 times over the course of a week. That's not going to happen in this AP. This AP is a totally different direction. It takes place over the course of seasons, and that's to show how the land changes from spring to summer to fall and winter, and it's to show like the environment, how that affects it, and how that affects your survival. Because how you survive in the summer is very different from how you survive in the winter, and that's something we really wanted to hit on with this AP is like all aspects of showing what it's like to live in, in a really, I don't know, in a pre-agriculture society. Yeah, that's how I'd put it.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any examples of what would be threatening to a following of awesome cave people that have mammoth pets?
It's a good question. Well, there are definitely mammoths in the following. It also turns out though that mammoths went extinct because people were pretty good at hunting mammoths. So people in general are pretty good predators. That said, there's also other big animals, and one of the coolest things about Pathfinder and Galarian is that we don't have to stick to the Earth the way that it was here. There's dinosaurs here too, right? There's brontosauruses walking around and stuff. And if you want to see like a brontosaurus fight a mammoth, like this is your AP. And if you want to be on the back of one of those and have your arch enemy on the back of another, this is your AP. So it definitely feels like what kinds of things can threaten that society. The other, angle of it is it's not just a society of like warriors, right? Your following is like people, hunters and gatherers. They're people who just like, I'm just trying to get by, and you're the heroes. You're the ones who are going and doing the hard stuff because you got auntie and kiddos back in the following, and you got to make sure they're safe. So there's plenty out there that's like dangerous, and I think that's kind of like a tonal part of the AP more than it's easy enough to throw like big dinosaurs and stuff at the party. They're gonna find plenty to challenge them, but it's like it's a tonal thing too. It's like this maintaining this very desperate, like harsh reality, this harsh lifestyle that they live is kind of like part of the setting.
Yeah, we have a bunch of questions still from chat, so I want to get through them. First one's not a question, but I think it's hilarious. Xmas Baker is saying a caveman inventor with his contraption is wheel.
Ooh, yeah, I like that.
All right, Chitreyu asked this a while ago, so I'm glad we finally got around to it. How much of the new magic rules from Secrets of Magic are used in Quest for the Frozen Flame, and how did it influence the flavor of the AP, if at all?
It definitely did, and if you go on, it's probably posted on the Paizo blog or somewhere. But yeah, during when Eric revealed this AP, he should have revealed the sketch for the first cover, and that has a pretty important villain on it, and she is an important villain because in the realm of the Mammoth Lords, like magic is historically not really a thing that these societies have used, and that's mainly just because they've figured out how to live without it. They don't need it, and they're like, no, we don't need magic. We know exactly what like roots and tubers are safe to eat and where these animals are going to be at these certain times. So it's very much like it's just like pre-agriculture societies in that way. They didn't need technology to live and thrive, but if you do have magic and you happen to be the leader of a really big band of warriors, then you're going to be a really you're going to strike quite an image, and there's definitely some elements of the Secrets of Magic book in this one. The another thing I can say is that the summoner is one of the iconics that will be appearing in the art throughout the book. So that'll be because Sarkoris is up in that same relative region, and God calling is a big part of their traditions, which is kind of summoning eidolons and stuff like that. So it felt like a natural fit in that way.
PRDG11 asks, will there be secrets revealed about the Mammoth Lords or the Mammoth Lord area?
Oh yeah, I mean, this is a really cool AP, I think, because we haven't said a whole ton about the realm of the Mammoth Lords. We've delved into like Kelid societies in other areas of the world, but they're not the same in Mendev or Numeria. Is a big one. In Iron Gods, you go to Numeria, and there's of course lots of native Kelids there, and that's kind of like the whole dynamic is technology versus Kelids. And but in the realm of the Mammoth Lords, there's not demons really like you have with the World Wound. There's not a lot of technology. It's just it's pre-agrarian people like roaming the tundra, doing their nomadic stuff, and we cover all sorts of like I really love like this kind of like historical stuff in the real world, like thinking about like what did people do before they had farms. They walked around, they like figured out which trees were safe to eat and stuff like that. It probably didn't eat trees, but they did all that stuff. So we get to explore a lot of like what that means in Golarion and what that means in the realm of the Mammoth Lords. Like they have different religious traditions, they have different cultural traditions, all sorts of stuff, and there will definitely be plenty of secrets, plenty of like just flavor if you're really interested in like I don't know, pre-agrarian societies and Neanderthal kind of to Homo sapien. That whole like bridge is pretty interesting. If you're interested in that kind of history, then this is a good AP for you.
Business Avatar wants to know, how did the flame become frozen?
That's a mystery that you have to play the adventures to find out.
Karen Nunos says Oregon Trail the AP ? Which is kind of related to, is this the survival element going to be gamified?
There is there are some aspects that are quantified. The survival aspect, sort of, in that your following, it's going to use the leadership system from the game mastery guide, and so you kind of keep track of your following. You can have a big old Excel sheet, probably is how I do it, of exactly who's in your following at all times, and you don't have to do that if you don't want. That might not be everybody's style, but at the beginning, you don't have a very big crew. By the end, you might have a really big crew, and I think that element is kind of like the gamified part of survival. It's like there might be aspects like, got to get over this mountain pass. If we don't do it right, there's an avalanche. We lose a lot of our followers, and you see that number that's gamified, and that has ramifications on the story. It's like, there's not anything like you must have this many followers to pass go, but there's definitely it definitely impacts how people see you, right? If you roll in with 50 mammoths, that looks a lot different than if you roll in with just 3. It's like, whoops, lost the last 47 at the pass. Doesn't look so good. So that element of the survival is played into it. Yeah.
Do you rise through the ranks of your following?
You definitely start as the unassuming, the player's guide will provide backgrounds, of course, and all that stuff, but you do start as not top dogs by any means. You're first level, so you're talented and strong, but you definitely make a name for yourselves, and by the end of it, people start to notice that it's like, the following has ostensibly has these leaders over here, but this party of 4 adventurers seems to be doing a lot of the work, so there's definitely some of that.
And how do you define your following? Is it just a generic following for everybody, or will the player's guide have specific following quirks and personalities?
The first volume has a really cool article in it that talks about your following. It's not like Ruby Phoenix where it's you get to make your own following. I mean, there's plenty of room to do that. Don't get me wrong. You're going to be having dozens of people here, so you can definitely be oh yeah, I go over and talk to Bob, and it's the GM is not going to be there's no Bob. You can write in Bob, but there's an awesome article in the first one that is going to talk about the following and its history and its traditions and the key players in it. It's going to have a big cast of characters, a bit like Ruby Phoenix in that they're going to be traveling alongside you, so you're going to get to know these people really well and have frequent encounters and conversations with the same NPCs. And that's baked into the story in such a way that you'll get to know these NPCs as written pretty well.
And finally, we're just about out of time, but I just want to make sure we covered, will there be long ships and raiding? I know I asked it earlier.
I know. I think, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think someone may be thinking of the lands of the Linorm Kings, which the realm of the Mammoth Lords is a landlocked country, so I'm going to say you can homebrew it.
I don't need no boat. I got giant mammoth.
I'll hollow him out and take him out to sea.
You can bring a boat. Yeah, you might be carrying it a fair distance.
All right. Well, I think it's about time we wrap things up, right? Coming up next at 5:00, so in 5 minutes, we've got Secrets of Galarian, which, Perram, I know that you're super hyped about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really, if you're going to be into the lore, you're going to want to stay tuned for that panel and know, great time to ask, why are the Mammoth Lords so great? Or any other nuanced part of the world that you don't think has enough info. Great time to ask about it right there.
And after that, we've got the Starfinder one-shot Band on the Run featuring the Dragons and Things Network. That's at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And then that's it. That's it for day 1 of PaizoCon Online 2021. Patrick, does it feel like we're already basically done day 1?
It always comes so fast, and I'm so excited for it. And then it's almost the end of day 1. I'm like, what happened? Where did my PaizoCon
go? Perram, anything you want people to know about before we sign off?
I just want you all to know that if you missed any of the panels, it's going to be available here on Paizo's official Twitch, the Paizo official, official Paizo Twitch channel and the VODs. I know they're going to put it on YouTube. And of course, these recordings, the audio will be on nodirectionpodcast.com, as well as all the other PaizoCons going way, way back.
So that's it for No Direction until tomorrow morning at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. And coming up, Secrets of Galarian, the last panel of PaizoCon Online 2021, Day 1.